Hello everybody, welcome to the first Vacuum Beer. I hope you enjoyed Miro's presentation. So, what I will be talking about is JSON schema for dynamic products, which basically means like how to make complicated stuff simple. And to give you a little bit of background, I work as a tech lead on a project for a company called Novuma, which does medical diagnostic tests for broad public. And that means that when you do a lot of tests, each test is different, and you have to somehow store it somewhere and work with it. And business people usually don't know what they want, and they don't stop bragging about stuff until they get it. And we as developers usually have a really hard time keeping up with all the stuff. And in this situation, every test that is new, we have to analyze what are all the attributes it has. For example, when you take a simple COVID test, the result is not just positive and negative. If you are positive, you have to have a so-called CT value, which basically means how much of the virus is in your blood. Or another example is STDs, which, like the test, has 7 different illnesses that we trace in your blood, which is totally different data structure that the COVID test. So this all means that with each product, you have different data set, you have different UI that allows your users to interact with your server. And that means a lot of development work, which you don't want. Ideally, you want to spend your time on meaningful things because your time is expensive. So there is one particular question you can ask yourself. Does your server really needs to understand the data that it's storing? And for example, for the test or the products that we are working with, it doesn't, because of JSON schema, which I will show you later. And if you don't really know how to tackle this question, you can ask yourself a different question: how to design your system so it doesn't need to understand the data. So let's break this down to some use cases. So someone needs to be able to input the data. Normally, when some medic or someone on the extraction side or collection side takes a sample from you and somehow finds out what the hell is going on in your blood, he or she needs to somehow enter the data in the system. Then system needs to validate that data in context of that particular product. And then the system needs to provide the data back to users, back to our medics, back to customers. It needs to show the results. It needs to create certificates for each product. Like all the certificates are different because the products are different. So here we jump to JSON schema, what exactly it is. JSON schema basically describes the form of the data that you store in JSON format. It can be used to validate any JSON, and basically it's the same thing as XSD. Many of you surely know what XSD is. And what is the solution to our problem using JSON schema? In database, we have a product which has some metadata like name and price and stuff like that. And that product also has a JSON schema that describes how, for example, the result for that test looks like, or what are the data that we need to collect from customer in time of reservation and stuff like this. The JSON schema is written by business people. Yay! We don't need to do anything with that. And then we have a front end that takes the JSON schema and generates the UI, and backend validates the data and stores it in database and as a JSON. So this is why I was talking about the question, does your system really needs to understand the data? No, it doesn't. And that's the beauty of it. So how do we tackle the generation of the UI? There's a NPM package called React.json schema form, which basically takes the schema and outputs the React component. It supports most of the React UI frameworks for theming, like Bootstrap, Material UI, Fluent UI, etc. And it supports the validation of the form data in real time. So basically, I don't know if you can see this, but on the left side, you have a basic JSON schema that describes how the result of COVID test looks like. Basically, what there is that you have a result which is negative or positive. If you have the negative result, that's it. And then if you have a result that's positive, you also have to have a CT value, which is a number that has a minimum value of 0. And how to use this? On the right side, you can see that you have a form component in React, which is supplied by React.json schema form, and you just use it. You just provide it with the schema that is written somewhere. You either take it out from database, or basically it doesn't matter for the library itself. And this is how the result looks like. And this is using the theme in Material UI we use for the whole web of Rychlotest COVID, which is a sub-brand of Nouma. So you can see here that basically it works. And here I have some useful links. The left one is a link for the documentation of JSON schema. The middle one is React.json schema form and its documentation. And the right one is a small demo on my GitHub that I prepared for you to look into, and how exactly all the things work. So what is the end result of this everything is that you don't have to store every product separately. You can describe it in JSON schema, and your server doesn't need to understand what the data is, and everything is basically tackled by the JSON schema and the library I showed you. Thank you. Any questions?